Okay, so I guess it's time to start. I'm going to go back to section 1.1 for a second because I meant to show you some stuff with the calculator that I didn't do last class. I wanted to show you how to do graphing in the calculator and things like that. So here we have that example where we first learned about the graphs of the functions, and we have like y equals 4 minus x squared, right? I said functions, but we don't really know what that is yet. I should say equations. So what I'm going to do now is make this smaller at least. Oh, I can just blow this up. Let's do that. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to graph this in the calculator just in case you've never used one of these before, right? I did recommend either a TI-83 or a TI-84 calculator, right? Here's TI-83, right? If you've never done this before, there's a button up top called the y equals button. And that's basically where you go to enter in your equations in terms of y and x. So you go over there and it says y1 through y7. That means that you can plot 7 different graphs, basically, right? So we have y equals 4 minus x squared. So I'm going to type in a 4 and minus sign, and then x is being squared. This little button right here is for your variables, right? So I'll just type in x right there, and I'm squaring it. So I have to use my caret symbol here, which says that I have an exponent, right? And then I'll put the 2 after that. So that's 4 minus x raised to the second power. Okay. Now, if I just go to graph, it'll show me the graph of the function here, or the equation, I should say. Yeah, so this is the graph of it. And you can see it looks pretty similar to what we have, right? Yeah. The scaling is a little bit different, right? So if you want to look at what the scaling is, we can go to window over here. And it tells you your x min is -10. So that means on your x scale, you're going all the way down to -10. You're going all the way up to +10. That's your x max, right? Your y min is -10. Your y max is +10. And you can change these around if you want to. Like, for example, let's see, we could have our y's going from, let's say, -5 up to +4. All right, let's just do that. So I'll just scroll down here and I'll go to -5. And you have to be very careful about your negative button in the TI calculators. Don't use a minus sign, right? Minus is strictly for subtracting numbers, right? So if you want a negative sign, this is the negative sign down here by the enter button, right? So you do negative and then 5 up to +4. And then now we graph this thing. Let's see what it looks like, right? Yeah, so that's pretty much all the key features that we have on the same hand-drawn graph over here, right? Okay. The x scale, you can see that didn't change. It's still going from -10 to +10, right? Okay. All right, I'm going to show you one more example. We did the graph of y equals absolute value of x over here, right? So in case you've never graphed the absolute value function on this, here's how you can access that. So we go to math, right? And then we go to num, and you see this ABS right over here. That's a function that takes the absolute value of whatever input you put in there. Okay, so then we can click on that, right? And then we can put in our x in there, and it says this is the absolute value of x. Okay, right? So let me change my scale here, right? I'll have it be the same scale as I have here, going from, let's say, -4 to +4, and y going from, let's see, -4 to +4. And let's have y going from -1, let's say, up to +4. Sure, let's do that. We graph it, and there we have it. There's the absolute value function, right? Okay, it looks like that nice V shape. Okay, so this is kind of useful, the absolute value function, especially when you're trying to simplify things. So we may come to that later in the class too when we start talking about complex numbers and stuff. Okay. Okay. Give me 1 second here. Here's something else cool that you can do, right? Now, when I go back to y equals over here, right, let's put it back on 4 minus x squared since that was more complicated than the absolute value function, right? So now I have y1 is 4 minus x squared, right? And let's say I wanted to know if I plug in x is 100, what will the y value be, right? Now, obviously, I can just, oh, by the way, when you want to go back to the home screen, you go to second, and right above mode, it says quit. So once you press the second button, that'll be set to quit. So you click on that, and it'll go back to the home screen. Okay. But now that I have that, right? So if I wanted to know what the y value would be when x is 100, right? I could just do this, 4 minus 100 squared, right? And that'll compute the answer, and it's -9,996, right? But here's another way that you could do that. And this works especially well when you have this super complicated function, right? And of course, I'm going to show you this later in the class also. So y is a variable. So there's a vars button over here, which stands for variables. Click on that. And you can see the next tab over here is y vars. So I'm going to click right to go to y vars, right? It's a function, which we haven't really defined what a function is yet, but it's basically you solve for y in terms of x is all it is, right? So we'll go to function. And then y1 is what it's saved in. So I'll click on that, right? And since it's a function, you can plug things into it. So you could do an open parentheses. What are you plugging in? You're plugging in x is 100 into the function, right? Close the parentheses. So this is like f of 100 if the function was called f, right? Instead, it's called y1, so it's y1 of 100. Okay. Enter that in, and there it is. There's your y value, right? Fair enough. If you want to pull up the last entry you put in, second enter, that pulls up the last thing you put in so you can edit it, right? So let's say I wanted to know what y1 of -5 is now instead of 100, right? Well, there you go. Okay, it's -21. Right? It's a great way to check your answers, right? Yeah, when you're doing homework and stuff like that. Of course, you want to make sure you're able to do it by hand too, right? There's a lot of algebraic simplification stuff that can't be done on a calculator. So you need to be able to make sure that you know how to do it by hand if you had to, right? But here you can check your work on simple things like this, okay?